A quiet gesture from Keanu Reeves left Sydney Sweeney emotional. The evening was calm, yet the air carried a certain tension. Cameras flashed, lights were bright, and people whispered around the hall. It was one of those Hollywood events where the air felt heavy with expectation. Stars walked in and out, all carrying their smiles like masks. But deep inside, many of them carried struggles no one could see. Keanu Reeves entered quietly. He did not walk with loud steps or seek attention. Instead, he simply nodded to those he passed, greeting them with a soft smile. Some noticed, some did not. For him, humility had always been his strongest trait. He knew fame was only a light that could burn out any moment, so he chose kindness over pride. Sydney Sweeney was there too. She had been shining in her career, but that night she carried a storm in her heart. Earlier in the day, a personal call had shaken her. Someone she trusted had spoken words that cut deep, making her doubt herself. Still, she dressed up, smiled for the cameras, and walked inside as if nothing was wrong. The first minutes of the event were full of noise. The host cracked jokes, people clapped, and the audience laughed, but Sydney's mind wandered elsewhere. She felt invisible in the crowd. She tried to hide her feelings, but her eyes revealed a quiet sadness. Keanu noticed it. While others looked at her dress, her hair, or her fame, he noticed the weight behind her silence. He did not rush to her. He waited, because he knew timing matters more than words. Then, during a pause in the evening, when people were distracted, he quietly walked near her. He did not say anything first. Instead, he placed a glass of water on the table in front of her. Not wine, not champagne, just water. The simple act surprised her. In a place full of shining glasses and loud laughter, he offered the most basic comfort. He leaned a little closer and whispered, "Sometimes the world feels too heavy. Water helps. Take a moment." His words were soft, almost like he did not want anyone else to hear. Sydney froze for a second, her heart stirred. It was not just the water, it was the way he saw her when nobody else did. Her lips trembled slightly as she picked up the glass. She felt a lump in her throat. For the first time that evening, her eyes softened. It was not a grand gesture, not something cameras could capture. It was small, quiet, and almost invisible to the world. But inside her heart, it was everything. She wanted to thank him, but the words did not come out. Instead, she just nodded and he gave her a gentle smile. No spotlight, no performance. Just respect and kindness. What she did not know was that Keanu himself had walked through storms like hers many times. He had lost people he loved, faced loneliness, and carried pain no one could see. Perhaps that was why he could recognize the quiet ache in someone else. That night, the hall was loud, but for Sydney, one small moment silenced everything else. And though she did not know it yet, that quiet gesture would stay with her forever. The silence that spoke louder after Keanu's quiet gesture, Sydney felt something shift inside her. She kept the glass of water in her hand, holding it like it was more than just a drink. Every sip reminded her of his words, "Sometimes the world feels too heavy." They echoed in her heart, soft but powerful, and for the first time that night, she felt less alone. The event continued around them. Laughter, speeches, and applause filled the grand hall, but Sydney's mind kept drifting back to that moment. She looked at Keanu from a distance. He was not trying to be the center of attention. Instead, he listened carefully when others spoke, nodded with respect, and smiled only when it was real. His calmness was unusual in a world where people fought for the spotlight. She thought of her own life. Success had come fast for her, but so had the pressure. She often felt she had to perform not only on screen but off it too, as if her smile, her words, and even her silence were being judged every second. That day's harsh call had cracked her spirit. But Keanu's simple kindness felt like a gentle hand reminding her that she was more than the noise around her. During a break, she stepped outside the hall for fresh air. The night was cool, the city lights glowing in the distance. She wrapped her arms around herself, not from the cold, but from the thoughts swirling inside. She did not expect him to follow, yet she heard quiet footsteps and turned to see Keanu standing a few feet away. He did not invade her space. He just stood there, looking at the same city lights. After a moment, he said, "It's strange, isn't it? How a room full of people can still make you feel lonely." Those words cut right through her. She wanted to answer, but her throat tightened. She nodded instead, blinking fast to keep her tears from falling. Keanu glanced at her but did not press. He knew the value of silence. Sometimes, silence itself speaks louder than comfort words. Finally, she whispered, "How do you do it? How do you stay so calm when everything around us feels like a storm?" He gave a small sigh, as if remembering something heavy. "I don't always stay calm," he said. "But I learned that storms pass. Pain changes, but kindness stays. When I lost people I loved, I thought the pain would never leave. But every time someone showed me kindness, even the smallest act, it gave me a reason to keep walking. I try to give that same thing back." Sydney felt her chest tighten. She had read stories about his losses, but hearing it from him directly was different. His voice carried the weight of experience, not just words. She turned her face away for a moment because her eyes were wet now. Keanu noticed but did not call attention to it. Instead, he looked at the city again, giving her space to breathe. After a long pause, Sydney finally said, "People think fame makes life easier, but sometimes it feels like it makes the heart heavier." He nodded slowly. "You don't have to carry it all alone." Those words unlocked something inside her. She exhaled, shaky and soft, and for the first time that day, she allowed a tear to slip down her cheek. It was not weakness, it was release. And though he did not move closer, she felt as though his presence itself was enough to hold her up. A voice from inside called her name, pulling her back to the noise of the event. She wiped her eyes quickly and forced a small smile, but when she looked at Keanu again, he simply nodded, silently telling her that it was okay. She walked back into the hall, her heart carrying a new strength. She did not know why such a simple moment meant so much, but it did. And as the night went on, she realized that his quiet presence had changed the way she saw everything around her. The unspoken bond, the night after the event. Sydney lay awake in her hotel room. The city outside was alive with lights and noise, but inside, her heart was quiet in a way she hadn't felt for weeks. She thought about the glass of water. She thought about his words. Most of all, she thought about the way he noticed her when nobody else did. It puzzled her. So many people had walked past her that night, but only Keanu had stopped. Not with empty compliments, not with loud advice, but with a gesture so small it became unforgettable. She wondered if he knew the power of that moment, or if he was simply being himself. The next morning, she scrolled through social media. Photos from the event were everywhere. She saw herself smiling for the cameras, her dress shining under the lights. The world saw a confident actress. No one saw the storm inside her. She almost laughed at the difference. But when she saw a candid photo of Keanu sitting quietly at a table, looking away from the crowd, she felt a strange connection. It was as if both of them lived in two worlds, the one people expected to see and the one hidden deep inside. Days passed and work called her back. She had a new shoot, long hours, and endless interviews. But no matter how busy she was, her mind kept returning to that night. His voice, his calmness, and his humility echoed in her thoughts when she felt tired or small. A week later, fate brought them together again. It was another industry gathering, smaller this time, more private. She entered the room with her usual careful smile, but the moment she spotted him across the space, her heart gave a little leap. He was sitting alone, reading something on his phone, not trying to be part of the crowd. This time she chose to walk toward him. As she reached his table, he looked up and gave the same gentle smile he had given her before. "You look calmer tonight," he said softly. She smiled back, though her voice wavered. "Maybe because I remembered your words." He tilted his head slightly, waiting. "You said storms pass," she continued. "I held on to that." Keanu nodded slowly, as if he understood more than she was saying. Then he pulled out the chair next to him, inviting her to sit. As they spoke, the noise of the room faded for her. He told her little stories, not about fame, not about money, but about quiet moments in life. He spoke of times when he would take long walks at night just to clear his mind, or how he found peace in simple things like reading a book or watching the sunrise. There was no pretense in his words. They were not designed to impress. They were simply real. Sydney found herself opening up too. She admitted how often she felt pressured to prove herself, how every mistake seemed louder because so many people were watching. She spoke of her fears, that one day, the same world that praised her might turn its back. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, he leaned back and said, "The world changes fast. One day they cheer, the next they may not. But who you are when no one is watching, that's what keeps you steady. Don't let the noise outside be louder than your own heart." The words struck her deeply. She realized he wasn't trying to solve her problems. He was giving her strength to face them herself. Then came a moment she would never forget. A waiter approached the table and asked if they wanted drinks. Keanu ordered a simple black coffee. When the waiter turned to her, she almost asked for something fancy. But instead she said, "Just water, please." Keanu glanced at her with a quiet smile. No words were exchanged, but the meaning was clear. She had remembered. And in that silence, something unspoken passed between them, a bond that did not need explaining. As the evening went on, she laughed more freely than she had in weeks. It wasn't because the jokes were funnier or the people were kinder. It was because, for the first time in a long time, she felt safe being herself. But deep in the shadows of her mind, a question lingered. Why had Keanu chosen to notice her that first night? Was it chance, or did he see something in her that others could not? The answer would not come yet, but the suspense of it made her heart race. When the world began to notice the quiet bond between Keanu and Sydney, grew slowly, like a seed finding its way through the soil. It was not loud, it was not dramatic, but it was steady. Whenever they crossed paths at events, they found comfort in each other's company. Sometimes it was only a few words, sometimes it was just silence, but it always felt real. Yet in Hollywood, nothing stays hidden for long. One evening, at another gathering, someone caught a glimpse of them sitting together, sharing what looked like a private laugh. Cameras flashed before either of them noticed, and by the next morning, the internet was buzzing. Headlines filled the screens. Keanu Reeves spotted with Sydney Sweeney at late-night event. Some articles were kind, calling it a beautiful connection between two stars. Others were harsh, twisting it into gossip, inventing stories that never happened. Sydney read the comments, her heart racing. Some people praised her, others questioned her, and a few made cruel remarks. She felt the storm of judgment rushing toward her again. The very thing she feared, being watched, judged, and misunderstood, was happening. Her phone rang. It was her manager warning her to be careful. "People will talk, Sydney, they always do. But you must stay professional. Don't let this distract you." She nodded, but deep inside, fear and doubt began to grow. What if this connection with Keanu was only going to bring her trouble? What if people turned it into something ugly? Later that day, she met Keanu at a quiet cafe far from the city lights. He was already there, sitting in his usual calm way, sipping coffee. She walked in, her face tight with worry. He looked at her gently and said, "I saw the headlines." Her chest tightened. "Then you know what they're saying." He nodded. "Yes, but let them talk. We cannot control the stories people tell about us. We can only control the truth we carry inside. She shook her head, frustrated. But it hurts. I don't want people to think things that aren't real. I don't want to be seen as a name in their gossip. Keanu leaned forward, his voice quiet but steady. Listen, Sydney. I've been through this before. They will build stories, and they will tear them down. If you spend your life chasing their approval, you'll lose yourself. But if you stay true to your heart, their noise cannot break you. His words steadied her for a moment, but then she whispered, What if they use you against me? What if people think I'm only near you for fame? For the first time, she saw his eyes grow heavy with memory. He sighed, then said, People have said worse things about me, but I never let it define who I am. You cannot stop them from speaking, but you can choose not to let their words change your kindness. His calmness touched her, but the fear inside her still fought. She pressed her lips together, unsure if she had the same strength he did. The waiter brought water to the table, and Keanu quietly slid the glass toward her, just as he had done that first night. No words, just the same quiet gesture. Her hands shook as she took it, and once again it reminded her that not everything needed to be explained. That night, when she returned home, she realized something important. The world might talk, the headlines might twist, but the moments she shared with him were hers, and they were real. But the storm was not over. In the coming days, the whispers grew louder. Directors, agents, even fans began to question her choices. And soon, a conflict would arrive that neither of them expected, one that would test not just their bond, but the strength of their own hearts, the weight of the storm. The days that followed were heavier than Sydney expected. Everywhere she went, she felt eyes watching her. At the studio, the crew whispered softly when she passed. At interviews, reporters slipped questions about Keanu into their scripts, pretending it was casual curiosity. Even her friends began asking if there was more to the story than she admitted. She wanted to scream that they were wrong, that it wasn't about fame or romance or gossip. It was about a glass of water, about a quiet gesture, about a man who reminded her that kindness still existed. But she knew the world would never understand that simple truth. One night, after a long day, she sat in her room with her phone buzzing endlessly. Her manager had sent her a list of things to say to the press to control the story. The words felt cold, lifeless, and untrue. They wanted her to distance herself from Keanu, to pretend that their connection was nothing. She stared at the screen, her chest tightening. She could not bring herself to send those words out into the world. That evening, she found herself walking through quiet streets until she reached a small park. She sat on a bench under the dim glow of a lamp. The world around her was silent, but her thoughts were loud. Then she heard footsteps. Slow, steady, familiar. She looked up and saw Keanu approaching. He sat down beside her without asking, as if he knew she needed company. "You look tired," he said softly. She let out a shaky breath. "I don't know if I can do this. The pressure, the voices, the lies, they want me to pretend you don't matter." Keanu stayed quiet for a moment, then said, "You don't have to explain me to anyone. What we share isn't for them to decide. It's for us to know." Her eyes filled with tears. "But if I don't explain, they will keep twisting it. And if I do explain, I'll lose the truth of what this is. Either way, I feel trapped." He turned slightly, looking at her with eyes that carried both pain and wisdom. "I've been trapped before, too. I know how it feels. But here's what I learned. The cage is only real if you let their words define your heart. Once you know your truth, no headline can hold you." She lowered her gaze, her voice trembling. "But I'm not as strong as you." Keanu shook his head gently. Strength isn't about never breaking. It's about breaking and still finding the courage to stand up again. The words sank deep into her. They were not spoken to inspire a crowd. They were spoken for her, at that moment, with sincerity. They sat in silence for a while, watching the night sky. The silence wasn't heavy this time. It was healing. Then, unexpectedly, Sydney whispered, "What gave you this kind of strength? How did you survive all the pain you went through?" Keanu's eyes grew distant, as if he was staring into memories far away. He didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "I survived because of people who showed me kindness when I thought I had nothing left. Sometimes it was a stranger, sometimes it was a friend. They probably don't even know how much their small actions meant. But they kept me alive. Now all I want is to pass that forward." Sydney's heart ached at his words. She realized that every quiet gesture he gave her was not just kindness, it was a reflection of the kindness that once saved him. She wanted to thank him, to say something meaningful, but her voice broke. Instead, she reached for the glass bottle of water she had carried with her, and without thinking, she placed it on the bench between them, sliding it gently toward him. Keanu looked at the bottle, then at her, and for the first time, his calm face softened into something deeper. He gave her a look of quiet pride, as if he knew she understood now. But as peaceful as that moment was, both of them knew the storm outside was not fading. It was only growing. Soon the world's pressure would push harder than ever, and their bond would face its sharpest test. The breaking point. The storm reached its peak faster than either of them expected. The headlines grew louder, interviews became sharper, and whispers turned into shouts. Some people called their bond inspiring, but others poisoned it with ugly rumors. For Sydney, it was unbearable. Every time she opened her phone, there were new stories. Some mocked her, others doubted her, and a few even accused her of using Keanu for attention. She tried to ignore them, but their words crawled under her skin. Then came the hardest blow. One of her producers pulled her aside on set and said, "Sydney, you need to distance yourself from him. The studio doesn't like the attention. If this continues, it could hurt your career." The words stung deeper than she could admit. Her dream, her hard work, everything she had built, now felt like it was standing on shaky ground because of a quiet bond the world didn't understand. That night, she called Keanu. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "Maybe we should stop. Maybe it's better if we don't see each other for a while." There was silence on the other end. Then his calm voice came, steady but heavy. "If that's what you need, I'll respect it. But know this. Kindness is never a mistake. And neither is truth." She bit her lip, tears rolling down her cheeks. "I don't want to lose myself, but I also don't want to lose you." His reply was quiet. "Sometimes, to keep what matters, we must let the noise burn itself out. I'll be here, whether near or far. You don't need to explain me to the world. Just promise me one thing. Don't let their voices drown your own." She couldn't answer. Her chest hurt too much. All she could do was listen to the silence that followed, and then the call ended. The days after were some of the loneliest she had felt. She avoided events, ignored calls, and buried herself in work. But no matter how hard she tried, her heart kept returning to the park bench, to the glass of water, to the quiet man who had seen her pain without her speaking a word. And then came the twist she never expected. During a charity event where she had been invited to speak, the organizers surprised everyone by honoring Keanu for his long years of silent donations and support for children's hospitals. As he stepped on stage, the audience clapped wildly. But he did not look at the crowd. His eyes found her. Sydney froze in her seat, her heart pounding. She had not seen him in weeks, but his calmness was the same. He accepted the award with few words. "I don't do this for attention," he said softly into the microphone. "I do it because kindness was once given to me, and I promised myself I would pass it forward." The room was silent, listening. Then he paused, looked once more in her direction, and added, "Sometimes the smallest gestures carry the deepest meaning. Never forget that." The audience clapped again, but for Sydney those words were not part of a speech. They were meant for her. Her eyes filled with tears, but this time they were not only from pain, they were from realization. The world could twist stories, but the truth was stronger. And in that truth, she found courage rising again. The night ended with applause, but her heart knew the storm was not fully over. Another test was coming, one that would force her to make a choice between fear and truth. The quiet truth after the charity event, Sydney could not shake the weight of his words. Sometimes the smallest gestures carry the deepest meaning. Those words followed her everywhere, echoing louder than any headline, louder than any whisper of gossip. But the storm outside had not faded. The press wanted answers, the studio demanded clarity, and people online built stories of their own. It felt like standing on a stage while the world threw stones. One night, alone in her apartment, she stood in front of the mirror. Her reflection looked tired, but her eyes carried something new: resolve. She realized she could not keep hiding. Fear had chained her long enough. She picked up her phone, scrolled through endless messages, and finally stopped at one name: Keanu. Her hands shook as she typed, "Can we meet? I need to see you." A few hours later, they met at the same quiet park bench where they had once shared silence. The night was cool, the stars faint above them. Keanu was already there, sitting calmly, waiting. She sat beside him, her heart racing. For a while, neither spoke. Then she whispered, "I can't keep running from this. They want me to deny you, to say our bond is nothing, but if I do that, I'll lose myself." Keanu looked at her, his eyes soft. "The world will always ask you to choose their story over your truth. But only you can decide whose voice matters." Her throat tightened. "I'm scared, Keanu. What if I lose everything?" He paused, then said gently, "Losing everything outside is not the same as losing yourself inside. If you keep your truth, you'll always have more than what they can take." His words broke something open inside her. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but they carried no shame this time. She let them fall freely. "The truth is, you changed me, not with big moments, not with fame, but with something as simple as a glass of water. You reminded me that kindness is powerful. And I don't care what they say anymore. I want to hold on to that." For the first time, she reached out and took his hand. It was not dramatic, not a scene for the cameras, just a quiet gesture, mirroring the one he had once given her. Keanu's face softened, and he gave the faintest smile. "Then hold on. The noise will fade, but what's real will stay." The silence between them was heavy but healing. The world outside might never stop talking, but here, in this small corner of the night, truth was stronger than rumor. In the weeks that followed, the headlines continued, but Sydney stopped reading them. Instead, she focused on her work, her art, and the people who mattered. When interviewers asked about Keanu, she did not deny him. She simply said, "He is someone who reminds me of what really matters: kindness, humility, and truth." The words shocked some, silenced others, but they also inspired many. Slowly, the storm began to lose its power. And though the world would always watch, Sydney had learned something priceless. It was not the loud applause, not the flashing cameras, but the quiet gestures that shaped the heart. Keanu had once handed her a glass of water. In return, she now carried with her the strength to face whatever storms would come. And together, in their quiet way, they reminded the world that sometimes the most powerful stories are not shouted. They are whispered, shared in silence, and carried in the heart.